is Monday, September 24th, 2007, and I'm here in the Angie DeBow room with Judge Tom Bennett, who is a son of President Henry G. Bennett. And the project that we are recording for today is O State Stories. My name is Jennifer Paustenbaugh, and I'm the interviewer for today's interview with Judge Bennett. As I explained to Judge Bennett at the beginning of this interview, our purpose here is to talk about his experiences at OAMC, and his experiences are in some ways unique because he came here to Stillwater in 1928 at the age of 8 to the OAMC campus when his father was named as president of Oklahoma A&M College. And so I need to start earlier in time with you than most of the people that I start when we do these interviews. Can you tell me what you remember of the campus when you first arrived here, if there were any impressions that are still with you?
Well, one of the big impressions I had was Old Central was kind of boarded up, and there were birds flying in and out of the tower. And different boys of the neighborhood were going over and trying to kill a pigeon. There were a lot of pigeons there. But
so when you got here, the building was not being used?
well, when I got here, I was told, and I have not verified it, that there was already an order issued by the board of directors to destroy the old central building. When my father came, within the first week that he was here, the first week of June of 1928, as I recall, I'm told that he encouraged the board of directors to have an emergency meeting and rescind the agreement to destroy that building, and instead they found a little money, not much, to reconstruct, to make the building usable.
Okay.
For whatever purposes. It's been used for different purposes through the years, and I'm not sure which ones it was right then.
Okay. And why did he think that this was so important to do in his first week here on the campus?
Well, my father was strongly of the view that any campus needed to depend largely, in large measure, on the people who had been here heretofore,
Mm-hmm.
and that the original students, they would identify with Old Central, and many other students would identify with Old Central, and he felt like that to get the cooperation of former students, it was necessary to preserve what they would remember fondly of the school itself.
Right, so this campus landmark was really important then.
From my father's point of view, it was very important.
I see. So are there other things that you remember when you first got here?
Well, first got here, they were working on the old president's home,
Mm-hmm.
Fixing it. I don't know what all they were doing, but they had people doing the carpentry work and doing the electrical work, getting it where they thought it would be appropriate for my parents. It was very, very nice. But they were all very pleasant people.
Mm-hmm.
But they were working on the house at least 8 or 9 days, except Sunday during the time that we first moved in.
Well, now that house no longer stands, and it's the site of Bennett Chapel currently.
Well, the chapel front door is about where the garage was. It's behind where the house was.
Okay.
The front yard of our house was well removed from the chapel because it was way out front. But it was very nice. There were trees there, and we had wooden outdoor furniture that was put there.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather lived with us when we first came, and he enjoyed being out sitting under the trees. And us kids, anything Grandpa liked, we enjoyed.
Okay. So which grandfather was this?
I had Thomas Jefferson Bennett.
Okay. And so you were named, at least in part, for him.
Originally, I'm going now by what I've been heard in the family.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to be named Thomas Jefferson Bennett, but both of my grandmothers, and they lived far apart and they didn't visit together, thought I ought to be named Edwin. So because of that, my mother thought they ought to change my name, so my name is Thomas Edwin Bennett.
I see. And you were the last of their 5 children?
Well, that's the way my sister Mary would put it. I was a twin, and I was the second born of the twins, and we were the last 2 of the children.
Okay. So when they came to OAMC, they had 5 children that were still at home. So,
yes.
So
my older brother Henry came as a freshman in college. He was 14 years old.
And he was a freshman in college?
Yes.
Okay.
And the rest of us were scattered in school. My sister Mary and I were in the second, we were in the 3rd grade. We completed the 2nd grade in Durant. And we started 3rd grade in Eugene Fields. The old building's still there, but it's no longer a school. It's a grocery store now.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
It's on Washington Street, I believe 6th and Washington.
Okay, so the Consumers IGA?
Yeah, that was Eugene Fields.
Okay, that's the first time that I'd ever heard that.
But it was a very fine school. At least I thought it was.
Great. And were there any special things that you were able to do as the son of the president that maybe other kids didn't get to do?
Well, I haven't thought about it. It never occurred to me that anybody was not doing what they wanted to do at the college here. It was a very pleasant place for us to be. And it had been very pleasant when we were at South. I was born in the President's Home in Southeastern State Teachers College.
In Durant.
In Durant. Well, it was across the street from Durant.
Okay.
Technically, it was outside of the city of Durant.
Limit, huh?
But we were just across the street north from the city limits of Durant. Everybody always said we were from Durant, and we were. We felt we were part of Durant. Of course, my grandmother Cannell and grandfather Cannell lived there. My mother's younger sister, Aunt Trulla, married Frank Hines, and they lived there. My mother's older of her 2 brothers lived there with his wife, and they had a grocery store, and they were working hard to make a living there. At least I was told it was hard work. I never did. It always seemed pleasant when I was there.
Well, what a wonderful environment to have gotten your start in with so many family members close by.
We were there. You know, Dad got his doctorate degree while we were there from Columbia University in New York City. And I think it's Columbia, anyway, the New York University there. Well, Columbia was the teacher's college, I guess, in the university. And he went there. He got his master's degree a couple of years earlier at OU, and educated background for university work. And then he went to New York City on a Rockefeller Foundation grant, and I was told he was the only one up to that time, maybe there have been more since then, who ever got their degree in 2 semesters.
That's really
A
impressive.
doctorate degree.
Yeah.
But in those days, if you enrolled in a course and just took the exam and passed, you got credit for it.
Okay.
And about a little over half of his school subjects he got credit for just taking the exam. And I always put that to the fact that because when he carried the rural free delivery mail down in out of Arkadelphia, they had a house which now the ground it used to be on, it's not there anymore, is part of the Ouachita Baptist College. Then it was right close to the Ouachita Baptist College.
Mm-hmm.
They kept roomers and boarders, and when rural free delivery mail was started in Arkansas, people from Arkadelphia thought they'd pulled a political coup on everybody in the state sitting around. They got the trial run of the rural free delivery mail, and the problem was the route was just over 20 miles, almost 21 miles, and it was 6 days a week. And you couldn't do that with one horse. It took 2 horses to do it, where you trade off the horses. And then if one of them got to limping a little bit, you needed a 3rd horse to fill in. And his grandfather was living where they'd gotten land first when they came, the family moved into Arkansas. And he was raising and selling fine horses to the people who could afford fine horses. And he went in about 2 days before they threw up their hand because they couldn't get anyone to take it because they didn't have enough horses to do it. And told them that if they could figure out how, my father had quit school after the 2nd grade and doing odd jobs and working in the garden to help feed the people in the house that came. And if they could find a place, a way to put Henry to work on salary doing that, he'd supply the horses, including any horses he might need if one got limping.
Mm-hmm.
And he was 14 years old, but he had dropped out of school after the 2nd grade to do odd jobs because they had to have money. And they finally made up a list which his mother signed that he was not yet of age to go without her signature, so she was saying that she and her husband were consenting to him going on the mail route if he were selected to go. But there was no suggestion that he actually was any particular year of age, but he was 14. But when they got it, the 3 men sending it in, they wrote in there, he's now 18. And when I first heard about it, I'd driven with him down there, and he's speaking to a convention of farmer rural free delivery rural mail carriers, and they announced his age, and I knew that was wrong. Driving home, I didn't say anything to Dad, but he said
they had added 4 years to his age.
They added 4 years, the age that was shown on the record there. He said, "Did you notice the age that they gave me?" I said, "Yes, that kind of surprised me." He said, "Well, that was the age they showed on their records, what I was, and nobody ever told them different."
Huh. Well, now I had read just recently that he was the first free rural mail carrier in Arkansas.
He was.
He was.
At least he was said to be in that convention. I only know what was commented on because of that one convention. But according to them, this was one that started for real free delivery mail. But he would get up and he was on salary then, and he had never been on a salary before in his life. He'd go down and sort the mail, get on the horse, and start out of town. And there was a clock on the county courthouse building that struck the time. And he needed to be going past the county courthouse building where the clock was striking 6 a.m. when he was going out, in order to get home in time to work in the garden, to keep the garden going along, to take care of feeding the people. But during that period, that whole period, his mother was determined he was going to get an education. She gave room and board as compensation for a professor from Ouachita Baptist College, tutoring him every night.
Oh, okay.
When he came in. And that's why he could take so many courses and pass them.
Wow.
Without going into class in New York City, which surprised his personal advisor. I met his personal advisor. I can't think of the old gentleman's name now, but he was about to retire, and his friend, the dean of the school, was retiring, had already put in his papers for retirement, and he came down to see if they couldn't get Dad to go up to be president of that college, or at least dean of the teachers' college part where they were working on advanced degrees. And Dad said they were just beginning to get things moving down here, and he couldn't afford to leave it until it got a little further along. So he did not go, but he came and lived with us for about a week. And because he visited a lot with Grandpa, and I'd sit out there and listen to him talking. But he was very pleasant. But he couldn't understand why anybody wouldn't want to go to New York City and work there rather than in this place out here in the Wild West, as
right.
he put it. But he was very pleasant. But he stayed 1 year past the dean of the teachers' college, and I don't know who they got up there, but they were good people. But he thought Dad would be jumping at the chance of going to New York and getting a higher salary than he got paid here. Of course, truth is, a higher salary would be necessary just to compensate for the increased cost of living.
That's right. So he took a sabbatical leave from his position at Southeastern.
He had sabbatical leave for the summer term and the next 2 semesters.
Okay.
He went up like he was going to go to school for the summer term, but he hadn't much more than got there. Then he got the phone call that Mother was in the hospital and they didn't expect her to live. And he came back. And she was determined he was going to get that doctor's degree.
Well, I had read that she was really the one that had told Columbia that he would be there to be in that course, and that she, really pushed him hard to get that. She
was determined he would get a doctor's degree. He needed a doctor's degree, she thought. That's when we were at New Rand, of course.
Right.
But according to my Aunt Trilla was Mother's younger sister. And we were living with my twin sister and my sister Liberty and I were living with Aunt Trilla and Uncle Frank during that period. But she was the one who called Dad to tell him that Dr. Talwick said that Mother was very sick and they couldn't be sure what the problem was, but that they weren't sure she'd live. And that was when Dad came back. But his time to be away from the college there was just 1 year. and he'd already had 1 year to get his master's degree, so he didn't feel like he could ask for more time.
Mm-hmm.
So he took as many exams as he thought he could pass without going to class.
That's a pretty amazing story.
That's a long time ago.
Yes, well, but it's still an amazing story even for a long time ago.
But without that period of time where every night during the school year, the winter school year, the 2 terms in the winter school year, without being tutored every night, he couldn't have taken all those tests and passed.
Right. Well, when he became president at OAMC, it was 1928, and the Depression started shortly after that.
That's right.
And I've read and heard so many accounts from former students who really came here with not a cent in their pocket, and that your father found jobs for them.
Well, he tried. He thought that everybody ought to have a chance at getting an education, who wanted it, who'd work for it.
And so it sounded like during this time that there were students that were just at your house almost constantly.
Well, we got well acquainted with quite a few people, but I don't think of it as constantly, but it was frequent, yes.
Okay. Well, I've heard just, not just 1 or 2 people, but lots of people that tell me about regularly taking a meal with your parents, or some kindness that they extended to them. And I know a lot of the students not only interacted with them in their home, but that they also were the teachers of a very large Sunday school class at First Baptist Church here.
They had big classes. I couldn't, from my own knowledge, tell you how big they were. But according to Dr. Gibson, who was pastor at First Baptist Church, the classes that Mother and Dad taught jumped from around 19 to 20 up to above 200, and then they gradually grew a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But how much they grew, I don't know. But both of them enjoyed teaching in those classes. And of course, Dad, because of the college things, frequently would have to leave town and might be going over a weekend. So he had a couple of assistant teachers.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Mother just taught it all the time herself. Well, she did have assistant teachers for the summertime when we'd go. Mother liked to take all of us traveling, thinking that we'd learn more if we got out around this nation.
Mm-hmm.
For example, in the summer of 1929, we went to Yellowstone National Park, and we came back through Colorado and went up, what's that big mountain down there just south of the capital?
Pikes Peak.
Yeah, Pikes Peak. We got up there and walked all around all over that place. But she wanted us to know more than not more than anybody else, but more than we would get if we didn't make those trips.
Mm-hmm.
But each summer we would do something different than we'd done the summer before for a long time.
Mm-hmm. So do you recall any other trips besides that one?
Oh yeah, we went to New York City, we went up into New England, we went to the Baptist retreat was at Ridgecrest in North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
I must have been there about 5 times, I guess. And we spent a good deal of time going to places like Atlanta, Georgia, and she just thought the United States was a great place for her, and we ought to learn about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you sound like you were very well traveled, especially for that time.
I enjoyed it.
I bet you did. Well, you became a student at Oklahoma A&M when you were 18, or were you younger than that?
No, I think I was 18. I think that's right.
Okay.
I may have been 17 actually. 18 had come October the 10th. But in 19, I graduated in 42, so subtract 4 years from there. What's that, 38?
38, right.
And that's about when I got to college, all right.
Okay. So, and you never considered going any other place than to Oklahoma A&M?
It never occurred to me.
No, okay. Well, I didn't know how wide your options would be. It would kind of be a
in
difficult
traveling,
thing.
we used to walk through the campuses of different schools, good-sized schools. Mother always wanted to walk and see what kind of library they had. And we did those things. My brother Henry, went to Johns Hopkins Medical School. And his first year, he lived much closer to Johns Hopkins University as distinguished from medical school, which is quite a little ways removed from the university itself. But my brother Phil got his law degree from OU and his master's in law from Harvard University. But all of them are gone but me. That is, all are departed this life but me.
Okay. Well, did you meet your wife when you were an undergraduate student here?
Dale and I started going together while we were in high school. And in fact, she's the only one I ever went with regularly anywhere. But she was a very good friend of my twin sister.
Okay.
And that's where I got acquainted with Dale. But it just was natural relationship, I guess you'd say.
Mm-hmm. So what year did the two of you marry?
We got married, I graduated from college on June the 1st, which was a Monday. But going back 8 full days, I got married to Dale on the Saturday.
Okay.
She finished her exams as a sophomore in college on Saturday morning, just before noon. And we got married late that afternoon.
Oh, wow.
And that gave us time to among other things, I already knew that my orders were to report on June 2nd to Fort Sill, Oklahoma for the physical examination, be sure that I was fit to fight. I always thought that us kids brought up knew how to fight, that wasn't any problem. But went to Fort Sill, and then was to report as soon as practical to the camp there, which is now called a fort in North Little Rock, Arkansas. And they thought I'd be staying there because they were just building that up good to train soldiers. And we got an apartment there in Little Rock, paid a month's rent. And then we were there almost 2 weeks and got ordered to report to the 43rd Infantry Division in Camp Shelby, Mississippi, which I did. I should say Dale and I got on the train and went down there. And because I was in the Army, she ended up in the old hotel at what's the name? That town slipped my mind right now.
Oh, near Fort Shelby.
Right near.
Right near Fort Shelby.
no, right near Camp Shelby in Mississippi.
Okay.
And the hotel cost was just 50% of their normal cost to the military and the wives of military at the post out there.
Mm-hmm.
And she stayed in the hotel there, and I worked at camp. I could come in on weekends. But we were at Camp Shelby a good little while. Because then we went to California, just south of San Francisco, and then shipped out, went to New Zealand, and then to Guadalcanal, and we worked in the South Pacific till they shut that down, until our 43rd Infantry Division.
Mm-hmm.
So they shut that down, the South Pacific was shut down, and we went to the Southwest Pacific, went into the Philippines. Of course, I transferred about that time because in defending their, to keep the Japanese from taking and holding a little island that they could shoot with aircraft guns to interfere with Admiral Hall getting fighter planes in a hurry off New Caledonia. He had the airport built, the runway,
Mm-hmm.
where 4 fighter planes abreast could take off from the middle of the field and 4 fighter abreast from the end of the field. So they could get off about 32 fighter planes much faster than any other airport.
Wow, that's
And
quite
he
a
was
setup.
proud of it, you know.
Right.
But the Guadalcanal was the first big fight I was in. But the real big one was where 50 of us at the waist of where the island kind of came, you know, those little islands did, they called it the waist of the island, came into where at high tide, it wasn't very wide across. And the Japanese had put an aircraft battalion down there on the south end of it, which could shoot. They couldn't shoot at that distance at individual airplanes, but they could. The whole battalion could break shells over the runway, which when Halsey was trying to get 32 planes off real fast, could interfere with that greatly,
Mm-hmm.
and did. And he wanted that stopped. And so even though at the time we had not gotten replacements and there were only 50 of us in my rifle company, I was commanding L Company 169th Infantry. We went down the waist of that island till they could bring reinforcements. And the Japanese tried to get rid of us and hold us in place till they could get reinforcements to eradicate us. But we were at the waist of the island, but we dug in and they kept shooting and mowed down the biggest tropical trees I ever saw, and kept shooting after they were down because the reinforcements hadn't come. And those trees fell across us, and then they got shot up to where they were kind of impacted over us. But of my 50, counting me, 12 got killed and everybody else got wounded.
Mm.
And the Japanese offensive grenades, if they'd had American grenades, I'd have been killed in there. But they got 4 of those grenades thrown in those trees down. The ones thrown at me went elsewhere, but the ones thrown at other people hitting those limbs came to me, or in the foxhole I was in. And I got 4 of those grenades off that were in the hole with me. I didn't try to throw them out because some of our men in earlier actions had grabbed Japanese grenade to throw out the 3-second grenade. Now these were ones where they, with fixing bayonets, they'd throw their bayonets and they'd charge before the grenades exploded. If they had been American grenades, they'd have been injured. A lot of them had been injured by flying shrapnel from those grenades, but the Japanese grenades, they had a high explosive and just cast iron pipe that the explosive was in with a fuse in one end and a plug in the other end, and they'd throw them. But if anybody grabbed it, it'd blow their hand clear off. It'd just be a stump down there. And so I ignored them, except I got an awful lot of grenade fragments in my body, mostly in my legs, right leg particularly. Now why it got in the right leg more than the other, I don't have the least idea. But they decided, when I was in the hospital there in New Caledonia, that they'd send me home because I'd need to be discharged because I wouldn't be able to walk very good again. And you see I walk. but I told them at Stillwater, Oklahoma, people 4Fs were not very popular. And they weren't at that time. Anyway, they were forming 8th Army headquarters as we were at that time in the Southwest Pacific. And they couldn't get anybody quickly to handle military intelligence part of it for G2 operations. So they let me do that.
I see.
The theory was till they could get someone qualified. But
so was that till the end of the war that you ended up doing that?
We were well into the Japanese surrendered later, but not then. But the truth is, I did so much better than they thought I'd do that they didn't seek a replacement.
Oh, okay.
But I stayed with that until I came home, temporary duty and returned. And the day I got back to Leyte was the day the Japanese surrendered. So I didn't get any more fighting then. But I did, as the G2 person, the military intelligence person for 8th Army headquarters, go to Japan. And I was shocked at how pleasant with us the older Japanese were. I would have thought they would have really been hostile to us.
Sure.
But because of my condition, the colonel in charge of all those little things made a vehicle available to me, and I'd take 2 or 3 with me, and we'd go to the little Japanese villages, and the old folks ran the little villages, the old men, and we would carry these big 50-gallon drums with the small boxes, the small containers of hard candies, and we'd find out how many children and grandchildren the members of the council, the old folks of the town had, and give them little candies for the children, and little 10-pound sacks of sugar for the women. And of course, they were desperate.
You're pretty popular.
They were desperate for sugar.
So.
And we got along with all those little towns. They were very, very gracious to us. But coming back one night, we were coming by Fujiyama, the little ridges, mountain south, and somewhat a little bit to the southwest, but they refer to it as south of Yokohama, of Tokyo. And we decided it'd be nice to walk up that, but we had to be back to camp by 2 o'clock to start getting stuff ready for the general's 7 o'clock meeting, the military intelligence part of the thing. And so you could only drive up about halfway. But I had to run the rest of it in order to get up and get back to get in by 2 o'clock in the morning this was a new thought to us. We hadn't had planned it, you know.
Mhm.
And so we ran up. I was still in good physical condition, except for my legs.
Mhm.
These boys, those with me about my age, had never run up a mountain at all under any circumstances.
So they were struggling.
Lo and behold, I was the only one who got to the top and signed the book that I'd been there.
Well, so by the time you were 25 years old, you had seen quite a bit of the world, and you came back to Oklahoma. And I remember you telling me several years ago about coming back to Oklahoma right after the war and setting off to go to Harvard to law school.
Well, I came home
Right.
the first time I could, but I did not get home before I went to Harvard. I was graduating in I should say I was being separated from the Army
Mm-hmm.
on, let me get the dates right. I believe that was first, the 21st of June. My brother Phil was they had the Commanding General Staff School there, and he was the judge advocate for the Commanding General Staff School, which made him number 2 judge advocate for the post. And I was eating lunch with him in the officers club when I had just been told on my long distance calls to Oklahoma A&M College, to the old deans that I knew, get myself into agricultural economics and change my major. And now we're in October, and the 21st of October, and they had started classes in August,
Mm-hmm.
the last week in August. But the old deans that I knew would refer me to other schools, but saying that probably ought to wait to January to start because it was too late to start in the school year.
Mm-hmm.
And I was telling Phil about that when the post judge advocate joined us for lunch, and he, being gracious, asked what I was going to be doing. I told him I sure didn't know because I thought I was be going to school by now immediately, but the things that I was going to study, the schools I would go to, which would have been A&M or Kansas State or Texas A&M, agricultural economics courses, and all of them had started the last week in August that year. I don't think they all do now, but I think they would, that we're talking about way back then.
Mm-hmm.
And all of them suggested I wait to start in January. I told Phil's friend, my brother Phil's friend, that I wasn't planning to just sit around and do nothing till January. He said, well, why don't you go to Harvard? He and Phil both had got their master's degrees there in the same year, and they'd sat in joined in chairs in a couple of classes. They were pretty good friends.
Mm-hmm.
He says, well, why don't you go to Harvard? He said, they haven't started yet. He said, I just got it done, want more money, of course. He says, they're always raising a little money. And they're going to start school next Monday, and you can start the school next Monday. And seemed like a good idea. Of course, I didn't have a transcript, and I didn't have civilian clothes, and I had minor problems. But my brother Phil and my wife dealt with me, and my brother Phil and his wife drove me in, and I was the one who got on the train at Kansas City. And in those days, if you're going to ride the train from Kansas City to Boston, the best way was to go one train with one train company to Chicago, then change trains and change train stations. Go to the next train station and go into Boston on another train. But that night, we had ice on the tracks almost all the way up and the switches and so on, and got into Chicago way late. And I was wondering how I was going to get a cab across to the other station, train station several blocks away. And Navy boy I was talking to said, well, there are 5 of us, but we can squeeze one more in. Our cab reserve, that we got one reserved.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up 6 of us with barracks bags in a small cab.
Wow.
How we all got into that, I'll never be sure, but we did. You can do marvels when you think you have to, you know.
Right.
And when the guy opened the door to the cab where we were going, to the new station, asked our train we were going on, 2 or 3 told him at about the same time. We were going into Boston. Says, you'd better hurry. Says that train should, looking at his wristwatch, should be leaving in at least 30 seconds. And he had to go in and go up one flight of stairs, one full, equivalent to 1 floor,
Mm-hmm.
and run down the track to catch that train. And the Navy boys were all ahead of me, except one of them, before he got to the top of that flight of stairs, stopped to get his breath. I was the last one that caught the train.
Oh, wow.
That one, I'm sure, caught the next train out of there to Boston, which would have been about 12 hours later.
Mm.
But we got into Boston way late. We should have been in at 8:30 or 9, before 9, but after 8:30. And we got in just about midnight into Boston. Oh, there was no problem. I ride the subway out to Harvard Square. The subway doesn't run as often that time of night as it does in the daytime. But I waited for it and caught the subway out.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose I got there around 1:30, maybe 2. And it came up. Nobody was on the street, and there were 2 policemen down on the corner under the under the big light, the street light. I walked down and asked them where I could get a room. I needed to give me a room to clean up, shave, and so on. They said, well, there's a convention going on and you can't get a room around here tonight in all probability. But if you go around this corner and a half block down and don't mind sharing rooms with anybody in the military, any part of the military, you're bound to have room because they're only running about 50% full these days. It's a pretty good sized dormitory thing.
Mm-hmm.
But for a quarter, I got me a bunk and bathed, shaved, cleaned up. Instead of waiting till a later hour, I went over to the law school, walked over to the law school, which was about 3 blocks. And what then was the administration building, it's not now, but it was then, Langdale Hall. I thought all the doors and all of them were locked. I was about to walk back to go back to the little place where I had a bunk in, and started walking away, and I looked back and outside downstairs stairwell to the basement. So I turned around and walked back, and why I did, I'm not sure. Walked in, down the stairs, up the door open. Their morning crew was coming on. The door opened. I was hooping and hollering, hello, hello.
Mm-hmm.
And an older gentleman turned out to be the head custodian of that building. Wanted to know what I came out of one of the cubby holes wanted to know what I was doing there that time of day. Says, "You're not an employee here, you're not supposed to be here." I said, "Well, I've got to enroll, be in class starting this morning, and I need to get there." He said, "I don't know a thing about classes, but Mr. Seavey does." And said, I've got him up in his little book place. He was a professor who wrote books. He wrote several text type books, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
And so he took me up to Professor Seavey's little place in what they call the stacks where the books were, where the professors who were working on books could, about half this size, could stack books and work their books till when they got through they could put them in a box and pick up the phone and tell the people to pick up their books. They had some books to go back in the stacks. Anyway, we went up to Professor Seavey's room, little room, and he leaned back. When he understood why I was there, he told the head waiter, the head custodian, says, "Could you get one of the fellows to bring us some coffee and maybe a sweet roll or two? We'd probably enjoy them." And he virtually quit working on his book for that morning.
Huh.
Visited with me. And he had been dean of one of the major schools of the Big Ten, a law school, but they offered him an endowed chair that paid a good deal more than the dean's pay at where he'd been. And being dean, he didn't have much time to work on writing books. He was interested in writing, so he took this job at Harvard. But they brought coffee and some very small sweet rolls, not the big kind, the little bitty ones.
Mm-hmm.
And we enjoyed a nice visit. He called and made me, he was chairman of well, I forgot exactly what his title was, but he had a title. All of them had titles.
Mm-hmm.
And he called the chairman of the admissions committee, who was, he said was a bit lazy. He had a class at 8 o'clock, and he'd barely get there in time to start teaching his 8 o'clock class. But his secretary, according to the professor, Professor Seavey, was always there at 7:30. He called and made an appointment for me, according to the appointment book of the chairman. And he says, when the first class is through, you're going to make class in torts that I'm teaching. You're going in with me, and I'll get you there. You'll be on this schedule. He made a whole schedule for me to follow. Says, you stay on it unless I tell you not to.
Mm-hmm.
There'll be a few dollars that you can get in this late, but we're starting classes this morning, and we're going to have you in class, I think. And so I went to my tort class through the books, opened the door, had seats in half arena type thing where they were half circle.
Mm-hmm.
All looking at every floor coming down was 4 inches below the floor ahead of them, so they could see better. And it was full, and there were 2 empty chairs on the front row. I told him it looked like a Baptist meeting. And he says, well, he talked to me enough to know that I've been where there'd been a lot of artillery at different times. He said, well, because of your artillery experience, you'll hear a lot better on the front row. That's your chair for this semester. Now you sit down in that chair.
So that's how you got into Harvard Law School, huh?
So that was my first class in Harvard Law School, and then I went up to see the chairman of the admissions committee the next immediately. And Professor Seavey wasn't sure I'd get a very cordial treatment, but he was just as cordial as Professor Seavey. He says that substance, I want to see your transcript. And I told him I didn't have one, but I could call Dean Patterson, and the dean was an old friend of the family's here at A&M, but he was chairman, dean of commission of admissions. I don't think there were many people ahead of commission admissions in the nation and major universities who were deans, but he was a dean. And he was a very gracious gentleman. He was dean when we came, and he was still dean. But his wife was very gracious to us little kids. She, on a hot day, there wasn't much air conditioning, and she'd wave us in and give us all a cold drink when we were going by their house frequently. I say frequently, not every day. She wasn't there every day when we were there, but we all thought she was the loveliest lady on the walk home.
I'm sure.
But she was very gracious to us. But anyway, the dean was very gracious, and I talked to him before I left where we were separated, Fort Leavenworth, and he said, just call and I'll have your transcript out, and we can give him the transcript on the phone. He thought they would take it. Anyway, they wouldn't let me call. I gave the phone number, and they called.
So they were sure they knew who they were talking to, huh?
Says you
Not
know,
one of your buddies, huh?
all kind of fool plays here.
Right.
But we knew we had the dean, and he had his lady secretary right in front of his office. He waved in, and she read my transcript to him. But my admission was on the basis that temporary, that the admission would be finalized when they received the transcript.
Okay.
But obviously the dean took it down and sent it up airmail, and it came back. It came much faster than I thought it would.
Right. So when you finished law school, did you return to Oklahoma?
No. Well, yes, I did. I returned. I didn't come to Stillwater when I said no. I came back, and Mr. Horsley and Wewoka had invited, I couldn't take the bar exam until June. And Mr. Horsley was outraged that they wouldn't have bar exams at that time with as many people coming back from the Army as was. But that nonetheless, we had to wait to take the bar exams in June. But he invited me to come down, and they weren't going to pay me anything, but they provided me a hotel and meals at the hotel room there in Wewoka. But I worked in Wewoka for Tom Horsley. Firm name was Horsley up to the Cup. They did an awful lot of work in the oil fields. They had a library on every big Indian group in the nation, and you couldn't. I don't guess you can now. Some of those areas you got to know what the Indian tribe capabilities are before you start drilling on
Right.
where you think you're getting at least there.
Well, we're resuming our interview, and I know that we've talked about a lot of different things. I kind of wanted to go back to some of your time before you were a student at OAMC, and even while you were a student here. I know that the president's home was used for a lot of different kinds of activities because there wasn't a student union at the time, so a lot of the on-campus entertainment happened in your parents' home. Do you have any recollections of that?
Well, there were a few things happened. I think the thing that happened that Mother was the most proud of, other than family, every Wednesday she had what she called a tribe leaders meeting for her Sunday school, where people who were going to get out, go visit, get someone to come to Sunday school, or get a call them on the phone or whatever, would come. And Dora, the maid there, would have them coffee or sweet different kinds of fruit juice. I think the more popular one was orange juice of the ones that they had there.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever the girls of that semester seemed to want, in large bowls. But they would be 20, 25, 30 girls come in on Wednesday afternoon planned to be there about 45 minutes to an hour. And according to Mother, that was essential to keep up attendance as far away as the Sunday school was down there, way down there.
Mm-hmm.
Dad always felt like it was a shame to try to walk students that far, but that was what many of them did, walk down. The starting way back, I'm not just sure what year it was, but it was quite early in our time living here. It was called to Dad's attention that Bishop Kelly came up for the Catholics, and the Catholic Church, closer than the Baptist Church, but quite a ways down.
Mm-hmm.
They would have to go down to see him, but the Catholic Church and the Catholic school, the buildings, they didn't have enough for the people they had, and they created a problem where they changed buildings, changed rooms. And when looked into it, Dad thought that having college boys and girls walking from dormitories and places they could rent rooms out near the college down there, and then have to wait and change rooms and whatnot to see the bishop was trouble. So, knowing that from conversations he'd had with others that the bishop dearly loved wood fireplaces, he showed up after the bishop, first time the bishop was up here after Dad came to the college. Dad went to his office down in Oklahoma City, went in to see him, and invited him to come and he said, we could separate off the living room and the music room from the rest of the house, basically. And the living room has a good fireplace, and we have plenty of wood to burn in the fireplace, and you can have a good fire. And the bishop laughed at that, I understand, but he used it.
Mm-hmm.
He'd come 3 or 4 times a year. But the bishop also was getting to be an older man and needed to have a place to lay down and rest sometime during the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And Dad told him if they'd give us a full week's notice of when they were going to come, that guest room would be open for him, and he could use it as he saw fit, which was upstairs, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the only religious group that I know of that came and used our place regular. The only time the bishop couldn't have it was Wednesdays.
Because your mother's event took precedence, huh?
That was her time to have girls in.
Okay.
And of course, that had been her practice at Southeastern also when we were down there.
Right. Well, now I heard in connection with opening the president's home to the Catholic bishop in Oklahoma City, that although it wasn't done obviously with that intention, that connection ended up paying off a little bit when your brother came back from medical school and was looking for a job in Oklahoma City.
Well, it did, but not the way you probably were thinking. They had been told, the doctors I'm talking about now, that if the Baptist developed a hospital in Oklahoma City or elsewhere in Oklahoma, and they as much as set foot inside, they'd be off the staff of all of the Baptist hospitals in the state of Oklahoma. And the bishop, they hadn't consulted him on that, just the people that ran the Catholic hospitals decided that. And Bishop stayed out of it at first. And then Henry was asked to open Baptist Hospital, worked that out, and he did. And the way it was worked out, of course, you would be aware that there are several specialties where there's only 7 to 11 doctors qualified in that area, in that specialty, in that specialized area. And Henry met with the older, two or three of the older doctors in this area. The older doctors didn't want to do that, of course, but they would pick who was going to be the head of that area for that Baptist hospital. And if as much as one of their doctors got removed, they would remove totally from all Catholic hospitals in the state.
That's interesting.
And that included some doctors who were members of the Catholic Church, I might add. But that was the plan they were coming on. But where the bishop came in, when they found out what Henry was doing, they tried to retaliate. And the bishop stepped in the middle of that and told them that they were running hospitals and not running what the Baptists did or didn't do. And bishop could be very effective in those kind of things.
Could say things other people couldn't.
Well, let's put it this way, the bishop was the only one who could have done what he did there. It stopped the discussion altogether. But Bishop Kelly was very, very appreciative of for all the years that he came up here. And of course, Dad thought that they ought to do the same thing for Baptists and Methodists and so on, but Catholics were the only ones that responded to doing anything about it. Of course, fundamentally, most universities are not prepared to take care of the religious groups in the way that we're talking about. But Bishop Kelly really appreciated that, and he actually would come very regularly to see his students. But the old bishop lived a lot longer than most people thought he could. You know, he was still alive after World War II. And believe me, he was still the bishop.
He was still in charge, huh?
Well, he was a very gracious soul. He was not one that you'd take much offense at, but he could be very clear, even so.
Right. And at lunch today, you were telling me an interesting story, or telling us an interesting story about how Murray Hall came into being.
Oh, yes.
Could you share that with us for this interview?
Well, yes. We were going in for Sunday lunch at home, noon meal. And Clint Strong called. He was the business manager. Now, in those days, I don't know about now, in those days, the governor named the business manager for Oklahoma A&M, and I suppose equivalent for some of the other schools. And Clint was was a very diligent worker. He enjoyed, he had enough money that payment was not the big issue with him there. But he enjoyed the work and did it very well. But Dad came in and told Mother there's a problem. Clint's coming to get me. We're going down to see the governor. What it was, he didn't say it, at least at that time. But Clint picked him up and they went down to see the governor. The rest of the story is what I can remember Clint Strong telling me. Anyway, they had a nice visit with the governor. The governor liked Clint, and Clint liked the governor. And the governor liked to serve tea in those gourd things that he had. And he
And this was Alfalfa Bill.
Alfalfa Bill Murray, the original governor.
Right.
Anyway, at OU, who did it, I don't know. Some of the leadership down there got a bill through to authorize expenditure, allocating funds, authorizing funds to build a big dormitory. And they couldn't get enough votes to get it out of the committee. They approached Dad and I suppose Clint together. They were both familiar with it anyway. That Oklahoma A&M get such a bill, and they'd support A&M bill, and we support their bill, and between us we could get
enough votes.
Get enough votes to get it not only out of the House, but to pass it in the House and Senate in the state. And they did, and it got to the governor. They went together to the governor's office. And the governor took those bills, put them in his pocket, and took them out to the governor's mansion. But because he was a good friend of Clint's, he called Clint and told Clint that the people from OU said veto their bill, that they didn't anymore want that dormitory. And he thought he ought to tell Clint he was going to veto it before he did it. Of course, Clint told him, well, Governor, let me come and talk to you about that. The bill was out on his desk when our bill and the OU bill also, when Clint got there. And after a good bit of visiting about a little of everything, Governor says, well, I'll just go ahead and veto these bills. And he signed the OU bill vetoing it. I should say he signed the veto for the bill. And Clint, with just tears in his voice, according to Clint, said, I did the best I could on that. Said, oh, that's a terrible shame. The governor won't know why it was a terrible shame. And we were going to name that governor, we were going to make it a secret and bring this out at the inauguration of the building itself as being Murray Hall. Said the governor reached out, got the bill, and he signed it. He approved the bill and handed it to Clinton, told Clinton to take it back and turn it in, which Clinton did the next morning. But
and thus Murray Hall was born, huh?
Thus Murray Hall was born. But, of course, as was mentioned at the table, they'd been trying to get a dormitory anyway, except that they knew they didn't have enough votes to even get it out of the committee themselves. But when the OU people offered to help, that was God sent. But the truth is, Clint knew the board members just like Dad knew the board members. And he knew that in order to get the dormitories, they'd name it anything.
recall one of the really prominent buildings on our campus opened probably maybe your freshman year here, and that was Gallagher-Iba Arena. Did that open before, or maybe it opened much earlier than 1938, but it was in the 30s.
I'm not sure when that opened, but I remember that Gallagher-Iba, of course, then it was just Gallagher Hall.
Right.
And it was an important addition. Actually, the old arena was just not big enough to do what we were having to do sports-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But we all of a sudden had opportunities that and getting people in to watch our non-football sports that had not been available there before.
Mm-hmm. So, and I understand that building was originally constructed as the 4-H building. It's a 4-H arena.
Originally the 4-H, they put tents up back of our place in the old engineering building. Now it's basically parking and part of the student union building. But I think that they started moving the students, that is the 4-H club things out by the old football, behind the old arena, between that and the football field. But you're right. I don't know what the arrangement was, but they did. The 4-H club groups met in that, plus that big open area to the side of, or I should say, in front of Gallagher-Iba, out to the. Oh, that's east, isn't it? That big open area.
Oh, right. It is to the east.
Mm-hmm.
Where the practice field is today. Yeah.
That was long ago. I hadn't even thought about that, but I don't know what the arrangement was. I just know they met there.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me turn to events following when you graduated from law school. You were back here, and your father had really taken a big role in the international scene with the .4 program.
Yes.
And traveled really extensively. How did your family feel about that? Was there any surprise that he was taking on such an important role?
No, because it came gradually. But remember, we had tremendous income. I'm talking about the college.
Right.
From the Department of Agriculture, bigger than most states, before World War II. And as far as I know, after World War II, they again were using a lot of federal funds. But no, I don't think anybody was really surprised that we had. Department of Agriculture was pleased that we had their people, two of them every time the deans met.
Mm-hmm.
That just wasn't true in many other schools. Way back there, because of Dad's first work, he went, Department of State would ask him to go, he went to Germany, I think it was. Anyway, the continent of Europe, and spent about 3 months. But his second big trip was to Ethiopia.
Mm-hmm.
And from Dad's point of view, it was opportunity for our school to get into the international realm. I suppose we still have a lot of international students, I don't know.
Oh, and still students coming from Ethiopia to school here.
Well,
Not in anywhere near the numbers that they did in the 50s and 60s, but
the system, the school system had to be built in Ethiopia because they didn't really have, they weren't qualifying any of the tribal boys to go to the university.
right.
And but the emperor of Ethiopia at the time, Haile Selassie, was very, very cooperative with that program. He wanted a university, and he got one.
Mm-hmm.
But they had to build schools to get them up through high school, then through college, to college before they could have college there. I should say before they could have a real college
Right.
program. But Emperor Ethiopia was very prominent in pushing that program all the way he could. Of course, as you know, Ethiopia was not a wealthy country. Economically, he couldn't support him as much as he would have liked to, I'm sure. But that was a long time ago.
Yeah, but it's still a pretty amazing thing to have made happen. I mean, when you consider all the infrastructure that had to be created at that end, and that it was, you know, Oklahoma, which wasn't a wealthy state.
We're just doing the best we could.
That's right. It's a pretty amazing enterprise.
Well, you know, when Dad had the .4 program, number one, he didn't take it, but the president wanted him to take it, Truman.
Mm-hmm.
So the man from the Department of State he put in charge made it clear it was temporary.
Mm-hmm.
He was acting. And when Dad took the program, at least according to Harry Truman, he was the only one who was given permission in the statute, that is in the language, to take such time as he thought he needed to be at meetings of the boards running this school here, or any legislative programs that he had to attend, not only to be there, but to come back and be prepared to be there, without reducing his salary from the .4 program even $1. And according to Harry Truman, they knew that Dad was going to do a thorough job, at least expected him to, and to be conscientious, and he wasn't worried about him taking too much time. But that's the only way Dad would agree to go. But actually, Dad wasn't talking the money to him, he was talking the time to him.
Mm-hmm.
That he felt like he had to be back in Oklahoma some. And he went on the .4 program. But one of the really big early programs that got .4 program going in the what's now considered the Near East, the Muslim area.
Mm-hmm.
In Egypt, they went in and put steel points on the plows, not only on the point, but curving back slightly. First time they'd ever had steel points on their plows in the history of Egypt. But worked out the program where the local foundries would make the steel points, and did. And within a 2-year period, all of the plowing in Ethiopia was done with steel pointed plows. It helped them greatly because they could plow deeper than they could with a wooden plow, and wooden plows were breaking so often. Economically, even though the steel plows cost them a little money, it was much cheaper than using pure wooden plows, because the plows didn't break on them all the time. But they were still using steel points on their plows when Mother and Dad got killed in Iran. Of course, they flew out of Baghdad, at least I'm told, on a passenger plane out of Egypt. But the pilot and co-pilot that particular day had never flown into Iran. They were flying out of Baghdad in Iraq. And they didn't realize, let me rephrase it, the pilots were not told as much from the ground stations as they are in the United States. And they were having a snowstorm in the capital of Iran, where Mother and Dad plane was supposed to land, or plane they were flying in. And they and their two, I believe 3 assistants, were flying in from Baghdad, and they were having a snow flurry. But the ground crew told them that it was just a flurry and it would be over if they just circle the field about, and told them the distance to circle. And they did, but they failed to tell them they were flying at just above 3,000 feet, towards 3,500 feet, but slightly less than 3,500. But the mountain on the east side of Iran, east side of the capital of Iran, are just about 4,000 feet high, and they flew into the mountains head on. But they failed to tell the pilot or co-pilot, and neither one of them had ever flown in that area before. They weren't familiar with the area. But it killed everybody on the plane. When you fly head on in a snowstorm into a rock wall, you're in bad trouble.
Yes.
But that was a long, long time ago. But Part 4 program really was abandoned at about that time. One of the key things that was making the Part 4 program well known in the areas they were real active in was they were doing things where the local business people could keep it going, like in Egypt, where they kicked off the program where making steel plows. They could have shipped in the steel plows a little bit cheaper, but not much cheaper. But instead they had people who were skilled teaching those people in Italy with those little foundries how to make steel points and put them on plow frames that the farmers had.
So they were teaching them to be economically self-sufficient.
They teaching them that to do it, but in order to teach them where they would keep doing it, it had to be
A local thing.
a local
Right.
product. But at least that was Dad's point of view. And Dad enjoyed the work, but he didn't intend to leave the college either. Of course, he figured that when Harry Truman left, it was unlikely that the president would be that dedicated to trying to help countries help themselves. They were under real pressure from the United States industries to buy United States and ship it. They had all kinds of things in India that were still in the port that they didn't have the transportation and whatnot, or the skills to start using it. Talk about machineries that
Right.
ran into several $1,000s in cost. But when their local people are manufacturing it and selling it, the technicians who are helping them get started have real local cooperation, because this is going to be their business.
Right.
They hope to get it established and get the Americans out of there right away. But they want the Americans there while the stuff is getting started, to be sure they started good.
Well, it was a very altruistic program. That's probably why it didn't last very long.
Well,
But it was an important program.
They started these type of programs. I'm talking about not particularly that type, but started programs using local industry in several countries. But they came closest to getting it established in Egypt. Any of them, that is where it would go on by itself. I don't know if it has gone on or not. But that was long, long ago.
Well, we've talked about a lot of things today, and is there anything that you wish that I had asked you about your time as a OAMC student, or some memory you have of Stillwater that I didn't ask you about?
I thoroughly enjoyed Stillwater and the community, and I enjoyed going to grade school and junior high and high school. Of course, I was the smallest boy in class, through grade school, and in junior high, a boy who'd come out of Jefferson and I were the same height and exactly the same weight. We were the smaller two boys. And no one has to tell you the bigger boys like to push you around. I didn't stand for it on purpose. I learned to fight early.
That'd be a good thing.
I can't remember ever starting a fight, but I can't remember ever failing to swing at somebody that pushed me around. That was a long time ago.
Well, thank you so much for participating in this interview. I appreciate it.
Well, I've enjoyed it, as you know. If there's anything we can do to help anytime, I'll be glad to try.
Well, thank you so much.